One week before my wedding, I was adjusting the lace on my bridal gown in my parents' guest room when I heard my mother whisper through the vents. Once she signs the marriage certificate, the entire trust fund becomes marital property. Her fiancé already agreed to split his share with us. My blood ran cold. The family I trusted and the man I loved were quietly calculating how to drain the multi-million-dollar inheritance my grandfather left solely to me. They thought I was a naive bride-to-be, completely blinded by romance and wedding stress. What they didn't know was that their greedy whispers had just shattered the illusion. Follow my story until the end to see exactly how I turned their ultimate payday into a financial nightmare, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. Their trap was set, but I was about to change the rules. My name is Charlotte. I am 29 years old, and if my career as a military logistics officer has taught me anything, it's that a successful operation relies entirely on spotting vulnerabilities before your enemy does. I've spent years managing complex supply chains, tracking moving pieces in high-stress environments, and maintaining absolute emotional composure under pressure. But nothing in my training could have prepared me for the tactical betrayal brewing inside my own childhood home. Just a few months ago, my grandfather passed away. He was a sharp, fiercely independent man who saw right through the superficial charm of the rest of our family. I was the only one who genuinely cared for him during his final years, sitting by his bedside, while everyone else made excuses. In his will, he left his entire $3.5 million estate solely to me. At the time, my parents and my younger sister Vanessa seemed entirely supportive. They showered me with affection, insisting that grandfather had made the right choice. My fiancé, Julian, was equally ecstatic, constantly wrapping me in tight hugs and talking about how this inheritance would secure our future children's lives. For months, I walked around in a blissful fog, completely convinced that I was surrounded by unconditional love. Julian and I threw ourselves into planning a beautiful, grand wedding. Everyone was smiling, helping with invitations, and counting down the days. I truly believed I was the luckiest woman alive, blissfully unaware that the people I trusted most were merely waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The illusion shattered into a million pieces exactly 7 days before the wedding. I had gone over to my parents' house for a final dress fitting, standing in the guest room while trying to adjust the heavy lace on my bridal gown. The room was quiet, but a distinct whisper suddenly drifted up through the old brass heating vent connected directly to the kitchen downstairs. I froze, holding my breath as my mother's voice cut through the metal grating with chilling clarity. Once she signs that marriage certificate, the entire trust fund legally becomes marital property, my mother whispered, her tone sharp and urgent. Julian already promised he'd transfer his half into our joint account the following morning. We just need to keep her calm until she walks down that aisle. Then came Julian's voice, smoother than silk, but dripping with absolute malice. Don't worry, Eleanor. Charlotte is so stressed with the wedding details she hasn't looked at a single financial statement in weeks. She thinks we're opening a standard savings account for our honeymoon fund. She has absolutely no idea. My sister Vanessa giggled, a sound that made my stomach violently churn. Thank God. If we don't get that money by next month, the bank is going to repossess my boutique and Mom and Dad will lose their house. Charlotte's little windfall is going to save us all. My blood turned to pure ice under my gown. The family I trusted and the man I loved were calculating how to ruin me. Standing above that vent, every logistical instinct I possessed kicked into overdrive. I didn't cry, and I didn't confront them. Instead, I forced my face into a calm, relaxed smile, walked downstairs, and ate dinner with them as if nothing had happened. I watched Julian pass me the salad, his eyes full of synthetic adoration, while my mother toasted to our long, happy future. It was a masterclass in deception, but I was about to outplay them all. The very next morning, I used my military clearance and logistics network to quietly dig into Julian's financial background and my family's true situation. What I uncovered was staggering. Julian wasn't the successful consultant he claimed to be. He was drowning in over $200,000 of secret gambling debt to aggressive creditors. It got worse. My parents had legally signed as guarantors for a predatory commercial loan to fund Vanessa's failing luxury clothing boutique. The boutique was a ghost town, losing thousands of dollars every single week, and the bank was preparing to foreclose on my parents' house to settle the balance. They didn't see me as a bride, and they certainly didn't care about my happiness. To them, I was nothing more than an unsuspecting financial rescue plan, a walking paycheck meant to absorb their reckless mistakes and fund their unearned lifestyles. They believed my grief over grandfather and my excitement for the wedding had blinded me to reality. But as I stared at the bank statements and court notices on my screen, the fog completely cleared. They wanted to play high-stakes financial games with my life. Fine. It was time to show them how a logistics officer handles a threat. With exactly 5 days remaining before the ceremony, I went to work in total secrecy. Instead of launching into a passionate, emotional confrontation that would allow them to pivot and alter their legal tactics, I took a cold, calculated approach. I scheduled an emergency meeting with a specialized asset protection attorney who had known my grandfather for decades. I laid out the bank statements, the debt paperwork, and told him exactly what I had overheard through the guest room heating vent. He didn't blink. Within 48 hours, we executed an ironclad strategy. I quietly transferred the entire $3.5 million inheritance out of my standard personal accounts and placed it safely into an irrevocable, multi-layered trust. My attorney added brutal, specific clauses that completely neutralized their plot. Under the legal terms of this new trust, the funds could never, under any circumstances, be classified as marital property. Furthermore, the capital was legally protected from being used to settle any third-party debts, loans, or family liabilities. Most importantly, I was designated as the sole, absolute trustee with exclusive distribution power. To keep Julian and my parents entirely unsuspecting, I left roughly $12,000 in my regular checking account. Just enough to make it look like my normal bridal funds were sitting there waiting for our honeymoon. I smiled at Julian during our nightly phone calls, listening to him drone on about our future joint savings. They truly believed they had successfully backed me into a corner. They had absolutely no idea that I had just built an unbreachable fortress around my grandfather's legacy. At the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding, the atmosphere was thick with false affection. Julian kept his arm tightly around my waist, kissing my cheek in front of the guests, while my mother beamed and Vanessa ordered the most expensive champagne on the menu. They were vibrating with an energy that I now recognized as pure, unchecked greed. They believed that within 24 hours, their financial nightmare would be over, entirely at my expense. As the dinner wound down, Julian subtly guided me away from the crowd into a quiet alcove near the back of the restaurant. My parents and Vanessa conveniently followed, forming a tight, claustrophobic circle around us. Julian smiled warmly, pulling a folded document from the inner pocket of his tailored jacket. "Charlotte, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with that rehearsed gentleness. "My family attorney drafted this standard financial security agreement. It's just a formality to help us open that joint account tomorrow and secure the pre-approval for our dream house. Your parents already looked it over and think it's perfect." My mother nodded eagerly, her eyes gleaming. "It's just what married couples do, Charlotte. It protects both of you." I took the document, instantly recognizing it as a cleverly disguised waiver that would legally grant Julian immediate executive access to my personal assets upon marriage. I looked up, meeting Julian's eager gaze, and smiled. I calmly signed a heavily modified, identical-looking page my attorney had prepared. one that legally bound absolutely nothing. They took the paper back, practically glowing with victory. They genuinely believed the bait had been taken. The morning of the wedding was a masterpiece of hidden tension. I sat in the bridal suite, perfectly calm, while Vanessa nervously checked her phone every 2 minutes, undoubtedly tracking the impending foreclosure deadline on her boutique. When the time finally arrived, right before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I requested a private gathering in the holding room. I told them I needed a moment with just my immediate family, Julian, and the wedding officiant before making the big commitment. They entered the room smiling, expecting a sentimental pre-wedding speech. Instead, the door opened behind them, and my asset protection attorney walked in alongside me. "Charlotte, what is going on?" Julian asked, his voice suddenly losing its smooth texture as his eyes darted toward the lawyer. I didn't answer him directly. I reached into my bag, pulled out copies of the freshly executed ironclad irrevocable trust documents, and slid them across the table. Beside them, I placed the printed evidence of their uncovered financial activities, the bank statements showing the forged signatures, the predatory loans, and the gambling debts. "The wedding is off," I said calmly, watching the color completely drain from Julian's face. My attorney stepped forward, his voice cutting through the suffocating silence. "I am here to officially inform you that Miss Charlotte's $3.5 million inheritance has been completely moved into a protected trust. No one in this room will ever touch a single dime of it. Furthermore, we have fully documented evidence of fraud, which we are prepared to take to the authorities." Vanessa fell into a chair, openly sobbing, while my mother began shrieking about family loyalty and betrayal. Julian tried to step toward me, his hands shaking as he desperately searched for another lie to spin, but my attorney calmly blocked his path. I didn't say another word. I turned around, picked up my car keys, and walked out of that venue without looking back once. It has been 3 months since that day. Julian's creditors finally caught up with him, and he is currently facing severe legal consequences for financial fraud. Vanessa's luxury boutique went into immediate foreclosure, and my parents were forced to downsize drastically to pay off the predatory loans they had guaranteed. They lost their beautiful home, a direct consequence of the greed that drove them to try and destroy my life. As for me, I used a small portion of my inheritance to buy a beautiful, quiet cottage by the coast. I am still serving proudly as a military logistics officer, but now I live my life entirely on my own terms, free from the suffocating manipulation of people who only loved my money. Grandfather's legacy didn't just give me financial freedom, it gave me the strength to stand completely on my own 2 feet. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you discovered your family was plotting against you? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.